Thunder Strike Back. 3 Hover. Author, Wild Wolverine. A week after this new round of conflict between India and Pakistan, the two sides have only stayed on the ground to a limited extent of shelling each other. Occasionally, a few tactical aircraft will fly to each other's forward positions and drop some conventional bombs to strike the other side's infiltration troops, but so far any aircraft have been shot down. Now, it's rocking Goya, the perfect opportunity for this country boy from Perbani. Therefore, the lieutenant must not waste the opportunity indiscriminately. So the lieutenant decided to implement Plan A, which is to safely kill a plane behind. He believed that no Pakistani fighter, not even the F-16D of the prestigious 5th Falcon Squadron, would be able to compete one-on-one with himself. What's more, the enemy plane in front that I haven't seen for a while is probably just another old-fashioned aircraft like the Mirage 3. In Pakistan sneak attack tactics, the lighter Mirage 3 multifunctional fighter is often used to guide the heavier aircraft. Mirage 6 fighter bomber. It is to be expected that after he sees his teammates being shot down, the response of a plane in front is likely to be desperately lowering altitude to dodge. Maybe he will crash into the mountains on both sides. The captain held his breath, and after the last cloud in front of him disappeared, he pressed the laser ranging button again. The coaxial laser rangefinder of the IRST device shot out a laser beam that the enemy could not detect. This time the ranging was successful. Soon the infrared seeker of the R-73 missile also caught the target, and the audio signal of the missile's infrared seeker locking on the target also began to beep, which means that the attack was almost certain. "It's up to you this time," Jafar said. Goya pressed the single-shot button, and a fighting missile flew away from the number 8 pylon. It crossed a shallow arc and flew towards the dazed enemy aircraft. Goya put his hand on the switch of the fire control radar, and later, no matter what happened, all he had to do was turn on the radar scan. The enemy never made any escape moves, he just flew so quietly, not knowing that his death was imminent. The R-73 trailed behind with white steam, which the Pakistani pilot could see with a slight turn of his head, but he didn't. Maybe he looks back once or twice a minute. The pilots who are at the back of the tactical formation usually keep looking back. Maybe the snow-capped mountains on both sides attracted most of his attention. Paralyzed. Goya, who was chasing after him silently, prayed that his opponent would not look back. He hoped that the god of war could stand behind him at this moment and not let his opponent notice the slightest bit. Time seemed to freeze, and from a distance, the tail flame of the missile could be seen approaching the Phantom very slowly, and then, exactly as expected, the Phantom turned into a fireball and began to fall. "God bless!" the lieutenant shouted. The first real victory was in hand. Even if it violated the rules of no melee combat, the squadron leader would definitely let him go. But it's not time to celebrate yet. He quickly turned on the fire control radar, entered the vertical scan mode, and skillfully adjusted the pulse repetition rate to the medium position. Another enemy might be in the clouds a few kilometers away, which is the best search pattern. Soon, the reclining Jafar found the target from the vertical status display, but the target was not one, but a series of intermittent. The other party was releasing radar jamming. The action was almost as fast as Goya turning on the radar. Crap, where to run? Goya, stepping on the turning pedal, leaned to the right at the same time, swooped over at a very steep slope, and dropped to 1,500 meters, relative height, in one go. He thought that the opponent should be in extreme panic at the moment, and his phased array radar is at this distance. If the angle is suitable enough to see through his electronic jamming and chaff false targets, the next thing will be very simple: use the rest one grappling round of, or 2 R-27 to send him to Allah in a few minutes. The change of things went against the judgment of the lieutenant. Su-30 found that under his mad pursuit, this target, like the scattered chaff, gradually disappeared from the multifunction display, vertical radar display, and Goya always thought that he was an old hand, but at this moment, he has no corresponding plan in his mind, which seems completely impossible. So far, Captain Goya has not been able to see his prey, so he can only assume that he is also a phantom. If you can't see your opponent, then the worst possibility is that you will rush in front of it in a confused way. This is impossible, it must have hit the mountain, Jafar said, and began to search the mountains on both sides, only to see a burning wreckage swept down on the slope of the snow-capped mountain, which is the phantom that was shot down just now. We lost our target, he must have used a trick to escape. Maybe he lowered the altitude. Goya himself couldn't believe such a judgment, even if it was very low, he should not escape the radar search, because my own high speed is less than 1,000 meters. Will there be a counterattack? Jafar said. Impossible. If it is going to turn, it must be elevated, and I will definitely be found. He must have hid. Goya suddenly saw a small point in front of him emerging from the clouds on the side of the snow-capped mountain, and quickly the ground got bigger, maybe he came out from behind the mountain. The lieutenant couldn't believe his eyes, not because of the 6G turn, but because the opponent didn't run away. He was flying head-on, grabbing his 9 o'clock direction. If he crossed this position and turned, he would definitely become a trouble. Damn, 10 o'clock, bandit! Jafar yelled. The other party was about 3 to 4 kilometers away, and he was moving quickly back on the cockpit glass, obviously trying to seize a spot where he could cut into the turning circle and launch the missile. It was a very nimble aircraft, not like a less powerful Mirage 3 fighter. He's still pulling the nose. Jafar shouted down, and Goya pulled the plane up sharply, trying to use the Su-30's instant circling power to approach the opponent's turning circle and regain the advantage with a powerful vector thrust. Which means that a lead trace can be re-entered. What is really scary at this time is the snow-covered mountains nearby. Any turning action will make these huge snow-capped mountains more approaching and hideous. Goya must battle his own fears. Pulling the nose can't take any advantage, because the opponent's turning ability does not seem to be weak. The lieutenant pressed the nose down and tried to increase the turning rate with a 7G circle that he had never tried in training. After more than 10 seconds, he gradually occupied the leading line, but the situation began to change again, and the other party calmly slowed down. Moving up slowly, the lieutenant had to look up to see the tiny target. Goya was shocked that the opponent seemed to be waiting for him to make a mistake, and he was waiting for him to rush forward in this round of strong circling pursuit. What a cunning thing! The lieutenant saw through the conspiracy, made a roll and pulled up some of the nose. Although it lost some speed, the nose could not point at the enemy, but it was not tricked by a light aircraft. The bandit was always dangling in the upper area to his right, not fully accelerating. Goya took a deep breath, and he warned himself that in such a scissors chase, the impatient side is more likely to take the bait. You son of a bitch, you underestimate me. The lieutenant cursed. He knew that as long as he made no mistakes, he would slowly gain an advantage. The continuous high angle of attack turns had caused both sides to lose most of their speed, but the captain was very confident. A single-shot light machine is obviously not strong enough to compete with the Su-30. If it delays for dozens of seconds, it will lose its turning speed and wait for it. Either lose the height and hit the ground, in short, it will be difficult to come back. What's more, the lieutenant was confident that he still had a trump card that he hadn't used. As Goya calculated, the two planes gradually lost their speed, the turning radius was getting smaller and smaller, and the distance between them was getting closer and closer. Jafar could already see the pilots in the cabin, and it could be roughly judged that the distance was within about 1.5 kilometers. Look, it's a... Jafar's voice stopped abruptly, and he couldn't remember what kind of plane it was. He wanted to say that it looked like a Mirage F1, but in his memory, the Mirage F1 had a much larger circle at this altitude because the power of that aircraft was weak.